Xenophobia, fear of dogs. Gamophobia, fear of marriage. Pyrophobia, fear of fire. So I'm not going to read them all. I'm going to just pull some random ones out. So what is fear? What is the definition of fear?
I actually Googled it. So it's an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat.
All right. So with that being said,
I feel it.
What would be the definition of fear to you? What do you think fear is? Without the book, what would you say fear is?
Just like confusion. You know what I mean? Like it's like the dark side of curiosity. You know what I mean? Because you're interested in something, but you don't really know what it's about. So it's kind of just like, is it dangerous, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess there's something like that. What about you?
I was thinking about it for a minute, and to me, what simply came to mind is just something that fear is anything that stops me from achieving the goal. Anything that stops me from going, I can do that, or I can accomplish that, or I can't get from point A to point B. That thing is in my way, and I don't want to touch it. I don't want to deal with it because it may harm me. It may set me back. Mm-hmm. Just something that stops me from achievement, man.
Yeah, you know? Like a bump in the road kind of situation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get you. Yes, that for me, fear plays a big factor in my life because I look at it as like kind of like a motivator too, in a sense, but I wasn't always like that. It's just like how I look at it now from like past experiences. But similar, like it's always like you kind of like assume. It's like the things that I assume are usually like, I try to get the fears out of the way. I try to like establish what I'm scared of first before I even get into like learning how to get the thing done. I'm like, what could go wrong, or what details could I like miss by accident and things like that. And I try to hit those first. And then once I get past those, then it's just like organic after that. Like once you get past the fear, you know?
It's funny you say like in your mind, because I always hear people say like the acronym for fear is false evidence appearing real. So it's like things that you think of in your mind that might not even be a reality. It's the whole like, I'm afraid of the boogeyman under the bed, even though I've checked under there 1,000 times and I don't see anything under there. It's the thought that there could be something under there. Yeah. Or it's like, I'm afraid to get on the plane because the thought that something could happen, even though I've never gotten on the plane before, So,
that's it. Like 9 times out of 10, like most of the stuff that we're scared of before we even try what we want to try, it doesn't even happen, dude. It's so ridiculous. Like, I guess it's almost like, it's just like a brain wiring. Like it's all experiences. Like if you got to touch the fire to understand it. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you could tell somebody like, don't do that, it's bad, you're going to get broke off or it's going to mess with you. It's not a good experience. But like, until they really understand what that experience, what that offers, they kind of have to just go through, And I think that's what makes it even more scary.
It's funny you say that because we skateboarders, and I would consider us, I said we pros, but we legends. We didn't put in the blood, the sweat, the tears. We at a place now where we go to the park and we kind of know, people could tell by how we skate into the park, like, oh, them dudes, they got it. And we always have that time where we go to the park and we see like the up and coming kid who, you don't have the heart to tell them like, you ain't ready yet, like practice your balance, practice pushing, you need to get better at ollies, but they learn how to do a kickflip mob, for those of y'all who don't skate, mob just means you do something sloppily. It's not perfected. And they trying to ollie off a 10 stair, kickflip off a 10 stair. And every time you just like, oh God, you don't want to look because you just see a bone breaking or you can see a head splatting. So you have the fear that they're going to get hurt before it even happened. You know, that's that fear coming in, but they fearless because they ain't got broke off yet. And you like build your way up, because I know if you get broke off, what you're going to get broke off, you gonna hang that board up somewhere, or you gonna be somewhere resting up, man.
Some people don't get up after that first fall, man. They're like, nah, you can have this mug, man. I'm good. And man, at Paramount Skate Park, we've seen people show up. Even like, I remember one dude came in with his girlfriend, and I guess his like nephew was the skater that they brought to the skate park. And his nephew was pretty good. He was like at least good enough to flow around the skate park, you know. And then the dude, he was like one of those swaggy dudes, like fashionable guy or whatever, and all fresh clothes on, expensive Jordans and everything. And he was like, man, I'm gonna drop into the bowl. What y'all call this? A bowl. And I'm sitting on the ledge. I'm like, oh no. I had just showed up to the park. It was early. I was like, I don't want to see this because I had some tricks I wanted to try. And you can't do it after you put that.
Watching somebody get broke
gonna keep you playing, and I would be like,
ruin your session, man.
Yeah, so I was like, here we go, man. And you can't look away either, man. I mean, he walks over there, he like bends down and sets it on the tail on the coping, and he puts his foot on there, and then the boy is like, yeah, and you just lean and wait until the tail starts to like bank in, and then you stomp your front foot down and ride into the transition. And he was like, I'm gonna just do it. And he didn't stomp enough. I guess like he let all of his weight off the tail, and then just like the board slipped in there, and he went straight down and smacked his head. And he jumped up and he had a gush right here. And I was just like, oh, there goes my session, dude. I'm done. Because I feel like if I seen that, then I'm gonna fucking hit that too, my damn self. It's crazy how like you could like fear can bounce off of people. Like I remember, for a good example, like when I was asking you to teach me tray flips, 360 kick flips, right? And we were at what park was it again?
El Dorado.
All right, we were at El Dorado skate park, and I was like, hey, Will, teach me tray flips, man. I've been skating forever. I cannot land this trick. And he was like, oh, it's easy. It's just all in the scoop or whatever. You're giving me I hate when people that are good at the tricks give me their opinion of how easy or not it is, because it's always easy because you got it. But for me, it was rocket science. I was like, I can't get the scoop. The flicks are good. I could get varial kick flips. I even can do a laser flip, which is a 360 heel flip. But I could not do a 360 kick flip. And then you're like, just do this or whatever. But the way you were describing it, the confidence behind your descriptions, like you were like, yeah, you just put your foot right here and you hang that toe off the side, and then you point your kickflip foot a little bit. And I was just like, oh, for sure, it is easy. Like the way you're explaining it, it built confidence in me. But it's like when someone asks me how to tray flip, the way I'm gonna explain it is gonna put fear in them, because I want to be like, all right, first off, you got to kind of pitch your toe like this, but be careful, because if you scoop this mug without that flick, it's coming straight at your shin bone. Trust me, I know from experience. Or like, I want to be doing this and that. Like the descriptions, the way I'm going to explain is going to make it seem scary because I'm scared of that dang trick. But you are not scared of it. You're more confident on that trick because you know how to stomp it. And so the way you explain it would take me out of my fear, which it did that day. And the result of it, I had 3 shinners to walk around the whole week of work with. So that's the thing. That's another point with fear, is like it's contagious.
Absolutely.
Something you might even not be scared of. If you're around someone who's scared of it.
Why do you think we experience fear? Like, why do you believe fear is even a thing to us as humans?
My now brain knows that it's a teacher. It's a communication tool. It's like when it's a motivator, man. Like if you're not scared of something, like why even pay attention to it? You know what I mean? Everything that I was always interested, anything, any hobby I took up, I got I got into it because it was something that I was in fear of. Like, and it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna die from this, or like no violent fear or nothing like that. It's just like the unknown. Like with drawing, like I used to see people draw and I'm like, how does he like whip that wrist like that and get that stuff? And like, some people are amazing with the pencil and the paintbrush and they just have it, bro. And it's all that time they put into it, which needs to be like explained more often because people think you just that you're born with these gifts. And it's like, nah, man. I started off on stick figures. You know what I mean? I started off with stick figures and tracing paper. I used to trace stuff and pretend I drew it. And they're like, well, then why'd you draw it on the see-through paper? My grandma would give me like a piece of regular like copy machine paper and be like, redraw it real quick. And I'm like, oh, because I brought her something that I traced out of a coloring book and was like, look, I drew Slimer. And she's like, there ain't no sketch marks. There ain't no eraser marks. If you drawing like this at 10 years old, we need to go talk to somebody and get rich. But then she would call my bluff with the regular paper, the all white paper. And then I couldn't draw it. But like, I was scared at first to like even try. That's why I would trace, because I'm like, I want to do good so bad. I don't want to draw something crap. So I would just skip the steps. What got me into drawing was like, I didn't know how to do it. And then I was scared of doing a bad job of doing it. So I started at baby steps. When I actually started, I started baby steps, stick figures, and then the little bubble characters and all that, like the rough drafts and all the way to the final draft. And I just put in that time. And over time, I got more and more confident to the point where I hit this one point where I was just like, I understand the logic behind this. Like, I understand now. It's like in skateboarding, once you learn how to ollie, that's a doorway to more things. And then even though you're scared of other tricks, you're not as scared because you took steps towards it. Like, certain parts of it. You got that little bits and pieces of confidence you can like grip onto to move forward. It's a necessary tool. Like, it's a natural function of the brain to emit fear towards things that we don't know, because it wants us. It's like, we're scared of that. That means we should like attack that and figure it out so we don't be scared of it. Because the ultimate goal is to be fearless, right?
I agree. I think, like what you said, man, I just think we experience fear for a number of reasons. I think one is an indicator to tell us that something is not good for us, possibly to tell us that something is there to harm us. Even more so, I think we experience fear. A lot of the things that we experience and we will call fears, I think they are rooted in ignorance. I think a lot of the things that we fear, we just don't understand. It's like I could imagine the first person that saw a dog. He was probably like, what is this thing coming at me? And here's this dog running at him with a tail and ears that don't look like what he used to seeing. And in the dog's mind, he's probably running up like, I'm man's best friend. Or he could be running up to attack him. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what that experience was. Maybe he loved dog until maybe he was cool with the dog until the first time he got bit. Maybe the dog was afraid of him, like, whoa, this don't look like me. I think a lot of our fears are just rooted in the things that we don't understand. It's like I said, about airplanes. The people are so afraid of airplanes because they're afraid of airplanes crashing. But statistically, airplanes are the safest mode of transportation.
Yeah.
There's more car accidents than there are airplane accidents because there's more people driving cars than there are people flying airplanes. But I think once people start to, put themselves around airplanes, read up on them, how they're built, why are they safe? Why are they dangerous? And then you start to realize that I was afraid of something because I just didn't understand it. I was one of those people where I didn't fly for a long time because I was afraid of airplanes. But I think what it really was is I was just ignorant to, how airplanes worked and what they were. And it wasn't until I started working where I worked that I was able to kind of be like, man, they really put time and energy and money and education and so much into making these planes to make sure that, that you're safe. And a lot of these companies, realistically, it's a money aspect. It's like, you know how much money they would lose if a plane was to go down or something like that. So it's their business. You know, it's like if you're a cook, you're gonna make sure, hopefully, that restaurant is clean. You're gonna make sure that, you know, everything is up to par, because you don't want to lose your restaurant. But even in that, there's people who I know, and I'm one of them, where I won't eat out of certain places because I'm like, I don't know if they clean. You know, catering trucks, and that's no offense to anybody that owns a catering truck. I don't eat off of them because I'm like, well, where do they wash their hands? Where do they store their meat? And how do they do this? But if I really stop and think about it, it's really all rooted in ignorance, because I haven't taken the time to ask or to study, you know, or how do you guys store your food? You know, how do you guys wash your hands? If you have to use the restroom, where do you go? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that the guy who works at the Denny's washes his hands when he come out of the restroom just because they have one, or it doesn't necessarily mean that their kitchen is clean, but because I have been taught that, well, this is a big establishment, they have to be that way. It's their job. You know, I just go in with the utmost confidence, but because I'm ignorant to how catering trucks are ran, you know, I won't eat from them. So again, fear is, it's funny how fear works, man. And it's just, like I said, I believe fears are developed in ignorance. I believe we're taught fears. You know, I just believe that fear is something that really just limits you. So with that being said, on the next topic or the next bullet point I have, so would you consider fear good or bad, or are you indifferent? Do you think it's both?
Yeah, I like how you said it limits you. I think the limiting is your choice, because it all boils down to decisions. You could walk through the fire and see what happens, you know? Like you could not really walk. All right, that's a bad example. I'm about to walk through no fire. But like, so for instance, like when
actually it's a good example.
Yeah, like when you're going to apply for a new job, right? Anything you get into, there's pros and there's cons. And so like when you're going for a new job and they're explaining, like for me, I started to work in the hospital, and I started off in the laundry department, like entry level. And they were talking about like people that worked in different places of the hospital were like, man, you're going to be around so much stuff. Like there's like the dirty laundry and all these sick people's laundry and the bed sheets and all this stuff. And it's just like, you could get really sick pretty bad. And like, it's real easy to come across something and jack yourself up, you know, but they have a lot of stuff set up for that to help us out. We got gloves and masks and glasses and all these things to keep you good, right? And hearing those stories, I kind of focused on those stories, because last thing I'm trying to do is get hit with like a bad needle or something, you know? When I talk to the people that work there, they're like, yeah, man, that stuff never really happens, bro. Been here, one guy has been there for like 17 years, never had any situations like that. 17 years. And he's around that stuff every day. And it's linen from the whole entire hospital. So like the chances, that made it real to me. And I have been like thinking about it for a couple of weeks. Like, do I even want to work in this department? Maybe I should decide to go somewhere else, like the cafeteria or something, just to get my foot in the door. And then when I talked to him, it changed me, because I'm like, oh, well, if this guy, you know, and he was one of the guys that's been there so long, he's just like, you know, but at the same time, I think the choice applies to this, because I could have said, I don't care what he says, and just leaned onto my fears and been like, I'm good working here. I don't want to go into this department. And I could have like risked not even having a job there, because there might not have been an open space for any of the other departments. But instead, I latched onto his views, because I really wanted to get in the hospital. So I latched onto the optimistic part of the views, and then I took the chances. And the fear was still there, but I didn't let it run my responses, you know? And so like, I think fear is more of just like a heads up. It shouldn't stop someone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's easier said than done, man. You just got to understand that fear is just going to be there. It's just part of the functionality of your brain. But like, we're not built, our brains are not going to say, hey, let's go out and get broke off. Our brains are trying to protect its host, you know? It's like Venom. He's not gonna be like, let's go jump off of some stuff, you know, and see what we could do, unless he knew that they could survive it, because he's trying to keep him alive so he can freaking have a host to survive. And that's what our brains are basically doing. They're like,
I'm gonna come back to what you said about our brains are not trying to get broke off later. But go ahead, but I'm gonna come back to that.
Oh yeah, so real quick, man, like, just our brains are not gonna let us go out and just like chase destruction, right? Naturally, it's gonna be like, no, that could get hurt, even if it's as little as you might prick your finger, so don't do that. And then all the way to like, some people have it to where like, I don't get a license, I don't ever want to drive a car because cars crash and people die. And I personally know people that are like that, and they're like well off in their 30s and have never driven a car because they pay attention to that detail. Cars crash and people die. But it's like, cars also get people from point A to B. You know what I mean? Cars save people from dangerous situations. If like if a rock fall is coming down and you're in the hills or whatever, and someone has a car, everybody piles up and get the heck out of there to save people from storms. My cousin,
if your wife is pregnant, you gotta get her to the hospital.
Exactly, dude. So there's, like I was saying, there's pros and cons, but how much, depending on how determined you are to get that goal, to achieve that goal, that's when you choose to focus on the pros or cons. We watch videos in skateboarding where people are getting broke off constantly, breaking their legs left and right. Like Thrasher has like My War. That's a terrible video. Terrible video to watch, but like, it just informs us of what's the dangers. And then we have the choice to either not try those or to like take those precautions while we're trying and avoid it. So I think it's both.
I'm gonna agree with you. It's both. And I think, you know how they always say time is the best teacher, time and experience. I would also add fear into there, because I think fear teaches you, you know, what you need to face, what you're ready for, what you're not ready for. You know, fear is like a mirror. It's a reflection of, you know, your shortcomings, of what's standing in your way. You know, it's like, I used to be afraid of the dark. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I would want to go to the kitchen and get something, but as a child, I would sit in the room thirsty, or I would hold I would have to pee. I hold it in because I don't want to get up and go to that bathroom. You know, something is over there. And I would suffer, you know, and that showed me that, you know, there was something that I needed to get to. There was an end goal, you know, there was juice in the fridge, you know. I could get to the bathroom and turn the light on, but I let that, you know, that fear stop me. And that taught me that, like, damn, like you would say, I didn't think of it at that in this way as a child, but I'm limiting my potential to be successful. You know, like this podcast. It was a fear to start this. This has been something that's been in my head for like 2 years, probably a little more. And I've talked to my wife about it so much. And she's like, babe, you should do it. So it's funny that when I talked to you, when you was talking to me, we both had the same idea, and how connected with somebody else, you know, made the fear less. Perfect example. You know, we're not telling somebody to get the vaccination. We're not telling anybody not to get the vaccination. But the perfect example is like, look at the vaccination dealing with COVID-19. You have people who are gung-ho, get vaccinated, wear your mask. The science behind it works. And then you have people on the other side of the spectrum saying, do not get vaccinated, don't wear a mask. This is against your freedoms. The stuff doesn't work. It's poison. It's killing you. And it's really about who you trust first and foremost, and what information did you get first? Kind of like you working at the hospital. Somebody told you, man, it's dirty, it's this, it's that. And that put a fear in you. So you couldn't even probably give 100% at your job. You couldn't give your highest level of potential at the job because you had these fears tied around it. And then when you met somebody who was working the job, they're like, man, look, this is how you do it or whatever. That alleviated some of those fears. And oftentimes I feel like we pick up fears from people who haven't even experienced the situation. You know, it's like somebody will tell me how scary it is to swim, but they've never gotten in the water. You know, it's like you don't even know how to swim. So all you're telling me is a fear that you have, you know, a fear that's rooted
based
in
off
you.
of assumption, right?
Yeah, you might have learned it from somebody, or you might have seen something in a movie, and now you're afraid. So you go around saying, "Hey man, don't get in the water. There's sharks in there." I'm like, it's a swimming pool. You know, how did a shark get in the swimming pool? Oh, but you'll drown. Don't go over there. But I'm standing in the 3 feet. I'm 5'9". You know, I'm trying to learn how to swim in 5'9". But then if you have a swim instructor who says, "Hey, you don't know how to swim. The water can be scary, but I'm the swim instructor. I'm going to teach you how to swim." The fear is still there, but you have somebody who you know he's not going to let anything happen to me. His job is to teach me all about the water, all about the human body and how to swim. So I think fear is really both, like I said, because it's tied to information. It's a teacher who gives you the information first, how you process it, and what you're going to do with it. So with that being said, you know,
you ever swim in a deep end at night? That'll make you think there's sharks in the pool.
I learned how to swim in college. I've never swum in any water over 4 feet. I'm 5'9". I've never even swum in the ocean, but I conquered the fear of swimming. And the way I did it was funny. It's an accident. So I'm in college. I need to take a kinesiology class. What do all men want to take? Weightlifting, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take weightlifting. I'm gonna learn about the body, get swole up. Class is full. I'm like, so what can I take? Well, go pick one of those classes. So I go up and I'm like, kinesiology 101, 102, 103, 104, any, meeny, miny, mo, 103. So I take 103. Mind you, my counselor puts everything, okay, these are your class, this is your schedule. So I show up to this room with all these kids sitting in the room, and we're all just sitting there having a conversation. There's no instructor. This little Hispanic guy walks in with some little Daisy Duke shorts, tank top, and everything. He's like, "Hello, my name is Mr. K, and I'm going to be your swim instructor." I'm looking around like, swim instructor? I can't swim. I'm terrified of water. Never tried to swim, never got in the water or anything. I just picked that fear up from a child. I don't know where I got it from, but I was just like, I don't know how to swim. And I raised my hand. I'm like, "Hey, I don't know how to swim." He asked, I want to know the levels of swimmers in here. So like, if you think you're an expert, raise your hand. So all these people raise your hand. If you think you're intermediate, like you can swim, you can do the backstroke, maybe you can do a breaststroke, 1 or 2 strokes, different forms of swim. Another half of the class raise your hand. It's about 12 of us. If you've never swum before and you're petrified, you're terrified of the water, raise your hand. Me and one other lady raised our hand. And I was like, "Can I drop the class?" And he was like, "Do me a favor. Let me make you a deal. Give me a week. If I don't have you swimming tomorrow, or no, the class was tomorrow. If I don't have you swimming next class, drop the class." But I'm terrified. He said, "I'll make you a deal. I will teach you how to swim, and I won't even get in the water. I'll never get in the water. I'm going to teach you guys how to swim. Even the experts who think they can swim, I'm going to teach them some things." The very first day, I was doing the elementary backstroke. I was laying down in the water, and I swam from one side of the pool to the next.
Yes,
he
sir.
never got in the water, and he taught me how to swim. But it was just getting that information from a source that was informed, So I know that's a funny story. So with that being said, the next question that I have, this is an awesome question to me. Is the human ego connected to fear? And is pride and arrogance a factor in whether we face our fears or not?
Absolutely. You want to answer that first or me?
I guess I'll shoot for it. Yeah, man. Yeah. I think the ego is more a factor, though, of why we don't face our fears, especially men. I don't want to tie women out, but I can only speak from a man. I think a lot of the times it's hard for us as men to admit to others or even to ourselves that, hey, I'm afraid. I think a lot of people do a lot of things, Sometimes I think we even may lash out or act out just because of certain fears. I see people walking around hard, I walk down the street and I see another brother or another person. I'm like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And they turn and they mad dogging me because they don't want to show any weakness.
They
it's like
scared, bro.
to them. And I'm not saying saying, hello, man, how you doing? Or speaking to somebody is a form of weakness. But some people are so afraid of appearing weak that they never let their guards down. How unhappy is it to walk around looking over your shoulder? Everybody that walk up, you got a mad dog or whatever because you want people to fear you. Because really, most times, you're afraid. You're afraid of somebody getting over on you. You're afraid of somebody hurting you. You're afraid of maybe something that happened to you before happening again. So now you have to walk around shelled up and bottled up. Personally, for me, I don't want to talk about phobias or nothing now because we're going to hop on that later. But there's a lot of things that I did not do. And there's a lot of times that I could have had an easier life, or I could have gotten through things easier if I had just asked for help. But my ego stopped me, my pride, my arrogance, more than anything, my pride stopped me for asking for help because I was afraid of how people would see me. I got a good friend, John Moore. When I was working at the bank, there was a lot of times I didn't have money. And I would walk all the way home. I would walk about 4 miles. And it was fine. I was happy to have a job. I didn't feel any way about it. But my ego wouldn't allow me to say, hey, John, I know you go that way. Would you mind dropping me off at the train? And when he found out that I was walking home, he was like, bro, what are you doing? And I was like, man, I don't mind. I'm just happy to have a job. It gives me, because for me, I've always been a person when I'm alone, that's time for me to pray. That's time for me to talk to God. That's time for me to clear my mind. But bro, when I would get home and sit down, these dogs would be barking. And he'll be like, man, all you had to do was ask. But I created this thing in my mind to where this would be embarrassing to let people know, I don't really have money.
Didn't they tell you? I remember I've heard working at a bank, they got to take alternative routes home and
so
stuff.
Do you know what kind of walking I was doing? I even would take different clothes and take my shirts off and stuff like that. Then sometimes I would even go to the train and, I didn't have no money to get on the train. I'm trying to get myself in trouble, but I'm creating a platform of honesty. And it would be like, man, I'm going to just hop on the train and pray that I don't get a ticket or anything like that. I never did, but yeah, man.
We all did it. I did the same thing right there by the courthouse. I used to jump on that train and I used to just I see the security and I'll go on to the next cart. I was the same way. I used to get in trouble for not asking for help, and not that I wouldn't get whoopings or punishment. I mean, when I was younger, my mom used to get on me why you didn't tell me, but it's just the weight of being a man,
bro, the fact that you said that, I think so many men and women deal with this, especially when you're the oldest, or especially when you feel like you have to be the man of the house.
That's it.
Or the woman of the house, because there was times where I was always kind of known as being Mr. Smarty Pants. I don't know how I got that, but oh, you Mr. Know-It-All. Oh, you smart. So there was times where I was afraid not to know something because, when that changed people's perceptions of me, I learned how to do so much frivolous stuff just because I have to know how to do it. Because if I don't know how to change a tire and we catch a flat tire on coming home, then what happens? What is my mom, or not necessarily putting it on my mom, it's just an example I'm using. No, but what is she gonna think, or who's gonna come and help us? Or so I could understand why, your mom's like, well, why wouldn't you come ask me? And you're like, because it all fall down on me. And if I ain't ready, or if I don't have the money, or if I don't provide the way, or if I don't know how to help my little brothers, or if I don't stand up for you, then what?
And it's from her fears of why she gets frustrated that you don't ask, because it's she's in fear of being a bad parent. She's in fear of something happening to you and she wasn't there to help, or at least offer some type of advice or something, And so it's this big chain, but ultimately, you have to own your insecurities and you have to be honest about them.
So I'm gonna just talk about some celebrities who have fears. And it's funny because one of the things you said was, there's something bigger than what you fear waiting on you. You know what I mean? And we all have, and I think a lot of people accomplish their fears because there's an end goal, or there's something bigger than them. There's a belief system or something that pushes them to face those fears. So I'm gonna give you like people that I think are big that had fears and they had to conquer them fears to be great. So like, and they not know, they just random people. I don't want to make our pod like, oh, it's about celebrities, but that's something that people can tie to, So like Johnny Depp is one. It says he has a fear of clowns. And I think that's funny because the man is basically a Tim Burton's number one cast. So, I mean, he played Edward Scissorhands. That's like a clown, Anything Tim Burton is doing somewhere, Johnny Depp is there. I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean, where he basically, all those people with face paint and everything else, but look at the amazing movies that he made. Look at the
What is it about clowns, bro? Are you scared of clowns?
No, my daughter is, though. But,
I know a lot of people that are scared of clowns, but I'm like, what is it about clowns? Because
I read that the clown, I wish I remember what it was called, but we'll talk about that, the phobias, that the fear of clowns grew after it. After the movie, after the series, because the original, it was actually a 2-part series, right? But after that movie, after Stephen King's did it, like the fear of clowns is just, it became astronomical. So he had a lot, I'm sure there was people who were afraid of clowns before that, but a lot of people might not know that the original clowns were jesters and their jobs were really dangerous. So like their jobs were to entertain royalty, kings and queens. And for a lot of those kings, if they were having bad times or they were having bad days, I don't know how I know this. I just remember reading it somewhere. If they were not funny, they were killed. Like you were lucky to be exiled. But can you imagine how nerve-wracking it is? You got to put all of that paint on, and this guy's mad probably because he's losing in war, or maybe his wife had another daughter because they wanted to have sons to pass the kingdom down to. And whatever he's going through, your job is to make him laugh. And some people just refuse for funny to be funny, and you dancing and you shingling, and he's like off with his head. So it's, I don't know. Clowns is funny. The second guy, and I thought this was dope. And Gustav, I hope I'm saying his name wrong, Eiffel, the man who designed the Eiffel Tower. His fear was heights.
Maybe that's why he designed it like that.
Somebody else, and this is going to tie into your son. So it's funny when you said that, which I started smiling. This person was afraid of public speaking, was spoke in the public, acted, we know was having a little thing. I'm not going to put that out there because I don't want nobody coming after us. But Marilyn Monroe, her fear was public speaking. But she was an actress. She was a model. She was always in the spotlight, doing interviews, talking to people, doing movies, but she was afraid to speak in public. But she gave so many women confidence to be models and to chase their dreams and that. And then the last one, I listened to his podcast, and it's funny because he was probably one of the most feared, and probably is still one of the most feared men out there, Mike Tyson. He said before every fight, he was terrified. But what led him to believe that, to get over that fear, was belief in himself and belief that his opponent was more afraid of him than he was of his opponent. And it's like, I would not think for a moment that somebody who was knocking people out in like 22 seconds, who was a pit bull off the leash, the thing that he hated the most, he did like he loved it. And that was training. Because in training is where he is sparring and studying his opponent. It's another way he was able to get off of those fears, because
I heard he would study a lot of fighters, man. Just like
he informed himself
over and over and over.
He ate, slept, and breathed boxing. So even when he was in his most feared moments, he went back to his education. He went back to like, I know boxing, I know what I'm doing, so I don't have to be afraid. So I just thought it was funny because, you have these people, because oftentimes, you're like, oh, but Mike Tyson was the greatest ever, but how does it feel to know Mike Tyson was terrified? Or like, man, the Eiffel Tower is beautiful, but if the guy didn't get over his fear of heights, you wouldn't have that beautiful thing to look at.
I mean, on the top of everything, like preparation is always key. If you want to,
prepare.
You're not supposed to just blindly just go after something, right?
Prepare.
You prepare, but at the same time, going back to what we said in the beginning, like fear is letting you know what you're supposed to be working on. You know what I mean? Like just in these celebrities that you mentioned, they all became successful off of the things that they were most feared of, they were most in fear of. And it changed and it gave them a life. It gave them everything they could dream of. Like the best thing to do is to just start. Like I learned that when I was setting up, I'll just start strumming my guitar in front of everybody while I'm right there and just like singing little stupid things. And eventually I warm up and I'm not even worried about it no more. I'm ready. But if I'm just quietly standing there and looking at the crowd and focusing on everything that could go wrong and looking at the eyes looking back on me and stuff, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm gonna throw up, you know? But I don't think if I was not that scared to do it before I did it and then I did it, I don't think I would have cared to do it so much. You get me? If I wasn't as scared of it, it's not something that I would have stuck with. I would have moved on to something that was more scary.
So Terry, my brother, man, it's been an awesome episode, bro. I love you. I can't wait.
Back at you, bro. And what day is it again?
It's Wednesdays with Will
and Terry.
Got it.
All right, bro. Take care, man. Drive safe.
All right. Oh yeah, I'm about to go scoop her. She get off at 7, but it ain't that far.